Okay, so you know those old books you have lying around your house in various bookshelves that you keep because you tell yourself one day you might actually go back and read them, even though you probably know in your heart you never will? Those same old used books that you'd most likely donate if you ever finally admit that you weren't going to read them made this 28-year-old entrepreneur 7 figures in revenue. That's 6 zeros. What's going on, everyone? My name is Matthew Osborne, and this is the first real episode in a series called The Young and Elite, which was a podcast I started back in 2016 to interview young and elite entrepreneurs under the age of 30 to figure out the things they were doing that really set them apart from everyone else their age. Be sure to subscribe below to get notified when future episodes are released. Now, I say this is the first real episode because the first one was me introducing the podcast. Second episode was the actual introduction to the podcast, episode 0, and this is the actual first interview that aired for the Young and Elite podcast. This interview, or rather I should probably say this guest, was my favorite and also the guest that made the biggest impact on me by far, and that guest's name is Caleb Roth. Now, for many of you subscribed to this channel, Caleb needs no introduction, but for those of you that do not know Caleb, we'll get to an intro in a second. First though, I want to tell you a little story of what happened just before this interview took place. So let's go back to 2015. That is when I met Caleb. I met him at a business networking event, and we sat at this big round table, which basically means that we couldn't talk because we were too far away, but I could eavesdrop on all of his conversations. I overheard him talking to some of the other people at the table that he had just quit his job to pursue selling on Amazon full-time. And then what did he sell? Of course, he sold used books. Now, at the time, I really wanted to also start my own business, and I was curious how he decided to make that leap. I wanted nothing to do with selling used books, but I was curious about chatting with him about his story and what kind of got him to take that leap over to self-employment. So I got his number, and then I proceeded to wait 3 months to actually give him a call. So once I finally stumbled upon his number again, he agreed to grab beers with me, and then long story short, he has not been able to get me out of his life since that day. We hit it off right away. We talked about business and business ideas and past business ventures, you name it. We were talking about it. We kept in touch on and off over the next year. We'd meet up, and eventually I told him I was going to start a podcast to interview guests, successful entrepreneurs under the age of 30, and then I asked him to be my first guest. After a little blackmail and some threats, he finally agreed to come on the show, and that leaves us at the start of this episode. But I really want you to stick around until after this episode is done, because I'm going to show you guys the power of partnerships and what has happened with Caleb and I since this interview took place. You don't want to miss that. All right, though, enough backstory. Let's dive into the podcast in 3, 2, 1.
Young and Elite, episode 1.
Welcome to the Young and Elite Podcast, where your host, Matt Osborne, interviews the world's most elite entrepreneurs under the age of 30. Learn how to become self-employed, gain financial freedom, and live a life on your terms while you're still young. If you want to join the ranks of the Young and Elite, keep listening because it all starts now.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Young and Elite Podcast, the show that interviews entrepreneurs under the age of 30 2 times a week. I'm the creator and host of the show, Matthew Osborne, and today we have a special guest joining us who's not just an amazing entrepreneur, but also a personal friend. Caleb, how are you doing this beautiful day in Colorado?
I am doing very well. Very happy to be on the show, Matthew. Thanks for having me.
We're happy to have you here. Caleb Roth, also known as the Book Flipper, has created a wildly successful Amazon FBA business selling used books. Most people wouldn't give the old books they find in a thrift shop a second look, but Caleb has turned those used books into a 6-figure business. Caleb gives awesome tips, tricks, and how-to articles on his website, thebookflipper.com, as well as his YouTube channel, to teach others how to build a business like his. Caleb is also the creator of the popular eFlip software that is changing the face of retail arbitrage. Caleb, tell us a little bit more about who you are and what you do.
Certainly. Well, you're doing a Young and Elite podcast, so I think we'll start there. I'm 28 years old, moved out to Denver just a year ago, so last summer, and I guess I flip books. You know, it's nothing super fancy about it, but it's a business you can build something up around. So you can use your marketing skills, your data skills, and try and build something that's scalable, and that's what I've tried to do.
Nice. Where did you live before you came out to Colorado a year ago?
So I spent almost 10 years in the great state of Indiana, not nearly as many mountains as we have here in beautiful Colorado. I've always had a place in my heart for this state and always wanted to get out here, but ended up spending 4 years attending a small Christian college in northern Indiana, and then spent just over 5 years working as in a marketing gig for an orthopedic company out there, and then eventually worked the deal to come out here and be a sales rep, and was eventually able to step away from that a couple months later and run my own gig full time.
Nice. Well, we'll get into talking about that then. So, one of the big reasons I wanted to start this Young and Elite podcast was to talk specifically about beginnings, because it's great to hear about a guy that's got a great business already going, but I'm a little more interested in where it all began and how it started. So, can you walk us through how you started your current business?
Yeah, I'd love to. I always had a mind toward being an entrepreneur. There's something inherently glamorous about it. But got the first job offer out of college. It was a great job. Worked for Johnson & Johnson in their orthopedics division. And you just start climbing the corporate ladder. And before you know it, if you're not careful, your entrepreneurial dreams can kind of take a back seat, if you will. So I'd always wanted to be an entrepreneur. Like I said, got not necessarily stuck, but was enjoying the corporate run for a while. And then really wanted to try and get back and be an entrepreneur, just get back to doing what I enjoyed, work for myself, have the freedom that so many millennials are looking for. And so, then you got to pick a business, right? I didn't have enough money saved up just to quit my job. I'd been married about 1.5 2 years at the time, and really wasn't in a place just to, just completely step away and just take a huge leap. So I tried to figure out something that we could kind of ramp up slowly, build into a business, and then once it was large enough, be able to step away from that. And so books is what I gravitated back to. I dabbled in books way back in the day, back in middle school, high school on Amazon, and then kind of had obviously played with it in college as well. Textbooks are expensive. There's ways to cut out the bookstore. I sold books on consignment, but it was really just a hobby at the time. And so then the idea was, all right, there's some runway, there's some upside in books. By this time, the tools had improved quite a bit. You could really get a lot of software and some better tools in your hands to really go out and run a data-driven business. And so we decided, hey, let's just set a goal. My wife and I kind of sat down and said, all right, we want to, look towards stepping away from our day job at some point. And the goal is, all right, how do we get from here to there? And so what we did is we said, all right, we're going to find 100 books a week. So that was a very attainable challenge. Obviously, we're both working full-time jobs. My wife was a PE teacher back in Indiana. So the goal was, all right, weekends, nights, evenings, whenever we have time available, we're gonna run around to thrift stores. We're gonna use scanners, and we're just gonna sell these books on Amazon. And we started doing that. We mapped out with spreadsheets. I'm a little bit of a nerd that way, but mapped out some spreadsheets and said, all right, if we do 100 a week, we sell through 2 to 3% a week, which we knew was feasible from talking to other sellers. What does this look like 6, 8, 10 months down the road? And we said, hey, there's a light at the end of the tunnel. If we can actually commit to this, if we can find the books, if the plan works, then we'll actually have a business that's large enough, not to fully supplement our income, but get us to the point where we know that we can be successful in this venture.
Yeah, definitely. You hit on the spreadsheet you made. I just wanted to point out that you have some awesome free spreadsheets if someone's interested in learning a little more about what you do or how you account for it on your website, thebookflipper.com. I know you have that one free spreadsheet up there. That's awesome. But also, you hit on a point that I think is really important when you said that it's so easy to put your entrepreneurial desires on the back burner, even by accident. And I think that so often people do. Very few people haven't at one point in their life thought, oh, hey, it would be cool if I started a business. But it's so easy to put that on the back burner unless, like you said, you set a goal, like 100 books a week you said, and you start chasing that goal. And until you set that goal and begin going after it, those desires are always going to stay on the back burner. So it's great that you pointed that out.
Absolutely. And we live in such a great time and age with technology and everything else. You don't need to go, buy a building or lease a building and actually run a bricks and mortar store. There's very little startup costs involved in so many of the businesses out there today that there's really no excuse. And whether it's just a hobby play or whether you have aspirations of quitting your day job, there are so many different ways you can go about trying to accomplish that.
Were there any other businesses you considered before starting book flipping, or is book flipping the one you knew right away you wanted to do?
I knew Amazon was where I wanted to ultimately land. It was becoming fairly hot at the time. This is about 2 years ago now. And it's continuing to explode and grow. There's merch by Amazon. You can create your own T-shirts, and you literally have no upfront cost. Amazon just takes a chunk of it as you sell them, and it's a somewhat residual business as well. People go retail arbitrage, so they can go into stores with a scanner and just buy stuff on clearance, or buy bulk items and just sell them back on Amazon. People are doing private label, creating their own products. Books is pretty much the gateway drug. It's what gets you in the door, because books are relatively inexpensive. Thrift stores view them as trash or commodities, and you can go in there and buy them for $1 or $2 or $3, depending on what part of the country you're in, and sell them back online for 10, 15, 20, sometimes more. Most people start with books just as they're learning the process, and then they usually branch or migrate into other categories. So I knew I wanted to start with books. And as I got into it, as I started building a bit of a brand around what I was doing and learning more about the space, there's so many problems to solve. There's so much upside still, and we're just having too much fun. So maybe someday I'll branch out and do wholesale or private label or something else. But at this point, it's 99% books, and I don't foresee that changing in the near future.
Like they say, if it's not broke, don't fix it.
Absolutely, but I'm also an entrepreneur.
Exactly.
We chase shiny too much.
So starting a business and running a business can be fun, but it's not sustainable unless you have a stream of revenue coming in. I think that's the biggest holdup for most entrepreneurs when they're first starting out. So talk us through what your first streams of revenue were in your business, and then go into a little bit of what your current streams of revenue are.
Sure. So the first stream was just anything I sold on Amazon. So the very basic business model starting out was buy books at thrift stores, library sales, find them in Facebook groups, wherever you can get your hands on books, garage sales, etc., and sell them on Amazon. And it's important to get that first stream of income, not just because you need it to survive at some point if that's going to be your job, but it's also a bit of a scoreboard and a bit of an encouragement or reassurance that this is actually going to work and it actually could work. And so getting that first little bit, making your first few sales, obviously you got to pay back the books that you bought. You got to pay for your software. There's some startup costs. But that was my first initial stream of revenue, is from Amazon. And working a full-time job, one of the benefits there is you don't need to pull any of the cash from your side gig back into real life. So you can just keep rolling or snowballing that money and just never extract a dollar. Literally just keep snowballing it and let it grow. And that's the best way to keep your business growing, because then it's no longer a cash issue. It's just a time, a systems, and a processes issue. So that was my original stream. To answer the second part, what are my current streams? The main stream is still going to be books on Amazon. So it's still what we're doing there. We've also branched out a little bit. Again, we're sticking with books, but we've actually hired a team of book scouters across the country. So we let them sell on a consignment basis. So we kind of teach them the model. We sort of franchise what we're doing here. And of course, they could go do it themselves, but a lot of people are inherently afraid of risk. And so we essentially pioneer and show them the way. So we have a whole training program. We provide some of their tools, some of their software. We pay for some of their expenses up front just to help absorb some of that risk and get them started. So we've got a team of scouters. We take a commission off of that. I do a little bit of consulting. I run my blog and make a little bit of affiliate commissions off of that. So thebookflipper.com. And then I've actually created a software called eFlip, which helps people do online arbitrage of books. So it's called Amazon to Amazon Flips. I'll do a brief plug here, but the idea is that you're buying books from merchant fulfilled sellers and flipping those around Prime, where people can take advantage of the 2-day shipping. Well, the thing is that customers really value that, and they'll pay a lot more. So long story short, eFlip is that software, and that's turned into a monthly reoccurring revenue stream for me as well.
Nice. So just to give people a little bit better idea of how you go about your business, you've mentioned that you go to thrift shops and buy books. If someone's interested in doing a business like this, do they just go to a thrift shop and buy the books they see, or what is your process for buying those books and knowing what books to buy?
Yeah, good question. So the beautiful part of all of this is it's almost like cheating. We don't just go in and buy random books or go off experience. Again, because of the technology that's available, you can get a PDA or a smartphone and actually connect it up with a live data source that just tells you what the value is on Amazon. So you don't have to take a risk. You don't have to buy books that you don't know the value of. You're buying books where you know that they're selling on Amazon for $10, $12, $15 or more. Now, they're not all guaranteed to sell. I only expect to sell probably 80% of the books I actually buy, but you know what the current value is. You can see how popular it is with something called sales rank. And again, it's almost like cheating. You have the data in front of you. It's just a matter of finding the sources then and improving your processes along the way.
That's awesome. What is the name of one of those apps that you use on the App Store?
There's a couple of them. The Amazon Seller app is one of them if you've got a seller account. There's some, if you're serious about books, you really got to take a look at FBA Scan. It's by a company called Accelerlist. So it's a downloaded database. Basically, you can access the data offline, which is really important if you're aiming for speed, or if you're stuck in a basement of a library with no access to cell phone connection.
Nice. What is one piece of advice you would give to someone wanting to do what you do?
Do I have to give just one?
No, don't limit it to one. Someone comes up to you and says they want to start a business similar to yours and do what you do. What advice would you give them?
I think the biggest advice is that, one, find people in the field that are willing to share. So there's a lot of gurus out there on the internet. Some are better at it than others. Some are just out there trying to make a buck. Some are trying to help people. Some are trying to do both. Find other people out there that are doing what you're aiming to do, and just shamelessly copy what works for them, and then kind of carve out your own niche. So that's one thing. The second is make sure that whatever you're doing is scalable. If you're doing something that is always going to be trading time for money, that's okay. But at the end of the day, maybe that just allows you to step away from your day job, but you're still have a job essentially. So find something that can ultimately be scalable, that you can outsource pieces of it. And I know that's kind of future thinking, but if you can find something that you can essentially outsource most, if not all of it, you can truly build a business rather than just building a job. And then the third thing I'd say is make sure you're doing something that's solving problems. If you're not solving anybody's problems, you're not really creating value, and no one's really going to pay you for it. So find some pain points, find some headaches, find just something out there that people struggle with, and see if you can go out and either create a product, a software, a tool, something to help solve those problems. And if you can do that, chances are you can build a business around that.
Yeah, that's great advice, talking about getting a business model that allows you to have some passive income, something that you're not always trading that time for money for. And that's something I've seen you do an amazing job with, whether it's getting those book scouters for you or doing the other things, is that you're able to focus on advancing your business rather than just getting stuck in all the day-to-day tasks with it. And also it allows you to go on vacations when you want and take time off when you want, and you're not stuck in the same job over and over again. Because there's nothing worse than going from working from your employer to working from yourself, but you're working twice as many hours and you have less time off. So you want to focus on that business that can give you some passive income and give you that freedom that you're actually looking for.
Absolutely. And you gotta crawl before you walk and walk before you run. Some people, probably smarter than I, have figured out ways to outsource everything from the beginning, and they've already built something that's scaled before they've even built it. And so you can actually do that. I wasn't as fortunate. I've worked hard to build a lifestyle business, which allowed me to step away from my day job. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. I'd rather work for myself than work for the man. However, now it's time to recreate that, or work harder to move it from a lifestyle business to something that's truly scalable.
Definitely. What is one habit that the Young and Elite listeners should implement in their lives?
I think the biggest one is to spend less than you make. And it may sound a little silly,
Excellent
but
piece of advice.
if you're looking to step away from your day job, most Americans, whether you make 30 grand a year or 300 grand a year, live paycheck to paycheck. I don't know the actual numbers, but I know it's high. And the reason for that, you got large mortgages, student loans, car loans. You're living way outside your means. And if a great opportunity comes along, or maybe you can take a 20% pay cut and go get the job of your dreams, you really just can't do it. So that'd be the first thing, is just spend less than you make. And again, there's nothing fancy to it. But if you can do that and set that discipline and set that habit, that's going to put you on the right path for whatever you're going to be doing.
So bouncing off that a little bit, you had said spend less than what you make. You had started a business on the side that you eventually took full-time. When was that tipping point that you decided this is far enough along that I can stop working and I can take this full-time? Because that's a scary choice to make, whenever that is working for yourself, taking that leap. But when did you decide to take that leap? What caused that for you?
Yeah, that's a great question. There's actually two kind of woodshed moments or turning points. The first was quitting my day job. I was actually doing sales training at the time for that same orthopedic company back in Indiana and actually moving to Denver. So I got a job with the sales organization out here selling orthopedic implants, so hip and knee replacements. And when I was getting recruited to come out, my manager, boss at the time, said, "Hey, what's it going to take to get you here?" Thinking it was going to be a dollar figure. And we had enough money stashed away. We were living well within our means. And so we were able to actually say, "Hey, it's not a dollar figure. I want flexibility." So we actually negotiated a deal where I worked between 2 and 3 days a week. That was it. And I said, I want to spend the rest of the time building my side business. So that was the first moment. It was kind of again, just bridging that gap. It wasn't a complete quitting my job. It was kind of hedging that bet and saying, all right, I'm going to do something with some guaranteed income here. And then I'm going to keep building my business and really spend more time and see if that can work. Well, about 4 months later, we were actually about this time. It was in August and September. So right at the fall textbook rush, and our Amazon sales were going crazy. We had our best month by far, probably twice what we'd ever had in any other given month. And that was essentially the tipping point that said, all right, you can do this. I found myself in the operating room thinking more about books than about bones. And I realized it was time to step away. So that was the tipping point.
That's definitely a career shift, going from knee implants to selling used books.
It is. I actually saw a chart today. Textbook prices are kind of at an all-time high. There's a lot of companies working to try and make them more affordable. So I actually like selling used textbooks because you are helping to make them more affordable and you're making a profit at the same time. But it showed like the gross domestic product, or kind of the national benchmark for inflation over the last 30 years. And the two highest categories, at least in this chart, were textbooks that had grown like 800% inflation rate over the last 30 years. And the second highest was medical device, somewhere in the neighborhood of like 600%. So, it's kind of a step back to most people moving from bones to books. But in this case, it's into a higher inflation category, which is a little bit counterintuitive.
Well, I think anyone that's attended college can attest to the fact that textbooks have risen dramatically in price. It's crazy how much it costs for textbooks now, especially if you're in the business of selling them on Amazon.
Absolutely.
So this last question right here is going to be more of a fun question. It's a scenario that I want you to try and answer. So the scenario is this. You have a shoestring budget, you're working full-time, but you want to become self-employed within the next year. What business would you start, and how would you start it?
Well, other than selling something on Amazon, if I had to start something from scratch, again, with the eye and follow my own advice on something that's scalable, I would probably look to do some sort of a rental business. So find something that it's either expensive, I don't know, like a wedding tent or something big. I think you and I talked about this last time we sat down.
Oh, we did. Cameras, event cameras, something along those lines.
Yeah, cameras, tents, or even create something. If you're not creating something, you're just a middleman. And yes, there's money in logistics, but then someone can always, undercut you. So you got to go and create something original or unique or slightly different. But I would do something in a rental business. You can foot the cash up front. Again, let's go with cameras. You can buy a $2,000 camera, rent it out for the weekend for some photographers if you can do a little bit of marketing. You can store a bunch of cameras in your dorm room if you want to start it in college. And then it's just a matter of, can you find customers for it? Rent them out, make sure you got some insurance on them, and that's your residual income. It's just your time fulfilling orders, and eventually you can scale the business, move from 1 camera to 2 to 5 to 10, and then you can find someone to fulfill it for you. You can outsource as many pieces as you want. So I would do something in the rental business. And again, you got to find something that you're passionate about, or that there's an opportunity in the market. But that's a scalable business. If it's going, that's something that could be very residual as well.
So this is a question that I have just based on what you just said. So it's a little bit off the wall. I'm putting you on the spot a little bit. But you had talked about finding something you're passionate about. How much do you think that relates to starting a business? Should someone start a business only based on something they're passionate about? Or do you think it's okay to start a business that you think will be profitable, that you're not too passionate about, and eventually move on to something else? Were you always passionate about books? Is that where your passion lied, or is that where you saw a good business opportunity?
No, that's a great question. I like books. I read a lot, but I wouldn't say I'm passionate about books. I'm passionate about business and building, systems around that and making sure that something can be profitable, growing it, outsourcing it, moving on, etc. So I fully expect to be doing something probably entirely different within 2 to 5 years. I don't know when that time frame is. Right now, I'm just having too much fun. Again, the passion could be different. I think it's important to define, I guess, more than passion, but what success looks like. If success is quitting your day job, then any legal means necessary to get there is technically determined as successful, right?
Right.
So yeah, I don't know that you need to be. I don't know that you need to find something that you're exactly passionate about. If you do, odds are you could stick with it longer. But passions and profits don't always line up.
Exactly. I think that's a key point to make there. Now, it's always a tough thing, I think, for new entrepreneurs is finding something they're passionate about, but also does what they're passionate about have the profit potential they're looking for to be able to be self-employed one day. And so it's that balancing out, figuring that out.
Absolutely.
So we're going to move on to the rapid fire round. I'm going to ask you 6 questions in rapid succession, and I want you to tell me the first thing that comes to your mind. Are you ready, Caleb?
Let's do it.
All right. Favorite book that you would recommend to the audience? Should be easy for you.
Well, if you're going to read it, that's one thing. If you're going to sell it, that's another. But if you're going to read it, I'd go with The $100 Startup by Chris Guillebeau. And he goes through a bunch of people's stories, and it's a great follow-up to the last question you asked. He goes through and says, hey, what's a topic that or what's something you're passionate about, and then how do you turn it into a business? And it's a phenomenal read.
Oh, I can attest to that. That is a great book, The $100 Startup. I will include that in the show notes page if you want a link to that $100 Startup book. All right, next question. Favorite app or software that you would recommend?
Well, I would obviously recommend my own eFlip. I'm also working on a startup called Accelerlist, which is going to be an inventory lab competitor in the marketplace. But a non-biased app would be MileIQ. It tracks your mileage for you. It's a non-cash deduction, which means you can really save a lot on taxes, and I would highly recommend it.
All right, what is your morning routine?
That depends on what I'm doing. If I'm off traveling, then it's usually getting a cup of coffee, spending time with my wife, maybe spending a little bit of time in the Word as well. But unfortunately, I don't have a very strong routine. I've read Miracle Morning by Hal Elrod and wanted to implement it, but haven't gotten around to it yet. So maybe I need to jump on that.
Hal Elrod has a crazy morning. If you've read the Miracle Morning, Hal Elrod gets up at 3:30 a.m. every single morning, 7 days a week, unless he's had a really late night before. That's just crazy to me.
Yeah, the guy's nuts, but it obviously works for him. And I think most successful people out there get up, earlier than 4 or 5 a.m.
It's true. It's tough to get into the habit of, but once you're there, I guess it's pretty easy to maintain.
That's what they say.
All right, what is your favorite quote?
I can't recall it exactly, but Steve Jobs had a quote about getting up every day and looking in the mirror and asking himself, if today was your last day on earth, would you go and do what you're about to do? And if the answer to that was no, too many days in a row, then he knew it was time for a change. So I just like that. There's so many things that can steal your attention, cause you to lose focus, and go back to the passion play. If you're just not passionate about it too many days in a row, maybe it's time to look for something else.
Awesome. All right. You are given $100,000. You can't spend it on your current business, and you can't start a new business with it. What would you buy and why?
Can I buy stocks?
Let's say that's starting a new business. So let's say no to stocks.
Man, I would probably get.
Is there a dream car out there?
Not really. Cars don't do it for me. I'd probably get, I don't know, the best coffee maker on the face of the world.
That's got to make some awesome coffee. $100,000 coffee.
It better come
maker.
with a lifetime supply of beans at that price.
Just buy a coffee plantation.
There's a good idea.
I guess that's a business, though. All right, so for the final question, is there a plug for your business that you'd like to give the young and elite listeners, such as a free product, awesome newsletter, great blog post, etc.?
Yeah, if you want to check out my blog, again, it's thebookflipper.com, and I just share my story. I talk about the data. I'm super into the weeds. I like spreadsheets. So if you're looking for motivation and want to see what's possible, I kind of share my story from the 100 book a week challenge to where we are today, and lots of other fun stuff along the road as well. So check that out. There's some links there over to the eFlip software. If you want to try and start building a business on the side, you can do that. And just come find me there. You can find me on Facebook as well, The Book Flipper, or just find me, Caleb Roth. and I'd be happy to talk with you. I love bouncing business ideas off anybody, and would love to say hello.
All right, Caleb. Well, thank you for dropping some awesome value and insight today. I know I appreciate it, and the listeners do as well. Any products or tips, tricks that you recommended are going to be included on the show notes page that you can find at youngandelite.com. But to close out this awesome interview, I have two last questions for you, Caleb. Who are you, and how are you feeling?
I'm Caleb Roth, and I'm feeling young and elite.
All right, you made it through the episode. Hopefully the information Caleb shared with you during that interview inspires you to start taking action in your life. One thing I'm curious if you caught was the part at the beginning of the episode. I introduced him as a six-figure Amazon business owner. Did you catch that? Because the title of this episode was a seven-figure Amazon seller. The difference of the title of this video is because Caleb has since grown his business from a six-figure business to a seven-figure business selling on Amazon. He's taken his own advice, he's set goals, he's tracked those goals, and he has grown his business significantly over the past 4 years. This also shows that he really does know the power of consistency, which I really believe is one of the foundational things that successful entrepreneurs all apply to their businesses. But let's go to a super fast update on what has happened since this interview took place with Caleb, other than him simply growing his Amazon business. So after this interview with Caleb, I started a few businesses that were mildly successful, and Caleb continued to work on his Amazon business, and he also wanted to launch an app for scouting books. Caleb loves numbers, he loves the product development side of things, I love marketing, so we decided it'd be a good match to partner up and launch this app called Scout IQ with our third business partner back in 2017, roughly a year after this interview took place. Since then, Scout IQ has grown to be a success. I started selling on Amazon myself, and together we now manage Scout IQ, the book flipper community, eFlip, New Price, and a few other softwares created to help Amazon sellers. So one partnership has completely changed my life, and it all goes back to sitting at a little round table with Caleb at a networking event. One thing that I decided to do shortly before attending that event was that if I wanted to be successful, I needed to start surrounding myself with others who were doing what I desired to do. So I really needed to upgrade my social network and surround myself with people who were smarter than me, who were more successful than me, and who were really able to invest in the relationship. So the advice Caleb gave in this interview was great, but I really want to give you one extra piece of advice, and that is to work at surrounding yourself with people who are smarter than you, more successful than you, and that are really able to invest in the relationship, because you never know which relationship could lead to a partnership that could ultimately change your life. So your homework right now I really want to give you is to go upgrade your social network. Once again, my name is Matthew Osborne. Thank you for joining me today. Subscribe below to get notified when future episodes are released, and I will see you there.